The Vorath Dominion had been conquering worlds for over 300 cycles. They had a system that worked every single time. They would find a planet with life on it, study the creatures living there, and then send a message. The message was always the same: surrender everything or die. No species had ever said no and lived to tell about it. Admiral Kethra stood on the bridge of his command ship. The vessel was called the Endless Hunger, and it was the largest warship in the Dominion fleet. Around it floated 200 smaller ships, each one carrying enough weapons to burn a continent to ash. This was the invasion force, and they had never failed. The admiral looked at the display screen in front of him. A small blue planet hung in the blackness of space, orbiting a yellow star that was not special in any way. The inhabitants of this world called their planet Earth. They called themselves humans. Vortal, the tactical officer, walked up to the admiral with a data tablet in his hands. He was old and covered in scars from many battles. He had helped conquer 11 worlds himself. "The survey is complete," Vortal said. "These humans are even more primitive than we expected." Kethra took the tablet and looked at the information. The humans had nuclear weapons, which was amusing. They had sent machines to explore their neighboring planets, which showed some intelligence. They had even walked on their moon, which was impressive for such a young species. But they had no shields, no faster-than-light travel, and no weapons that could scratch the paint on a Vorath shuttle. "How many of them are there?" the admiral asked. "Nearly 8 billion. Kethra made a sound of satisfaction. 8 billion workers for the labor camps. 8 billion bodies to fuel the Dominion's expansion. This single planet would provide more resources than the last 3 conquests combined." "What about their military forces?" he asked. Vortal pulled up another display. "Fragmented. They have divided their world into many separate nations. These nations fight each other constantly. They have never faced a threat from outside their world. They have no unified command, no planetary defense grid, no orbital platforms. They are completely helpless." The admiral smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "This would be easy. The humans would receive the ultimatum, and they would have 30 days to respond. Some of their leaders would want to fight. They always did. But once the first few cities were burned from orbit, the rest would fall in line. They always did. Send word to the Dominion Council," Kethra ordered. "Tell them Earth will be the 18th system to join the collective. Resistance is expected to be minimal." 1. Earth. He turned back to the display and watched the blue planet spin slowly in the darkness. Such a beautiful world. Such a shame that its inhabitants did not understand their place in the universe. They were not special. They were not important. They were simply the next item on a very long list. What Admiral Kethra did not know was that the humans had been watching the stars for a very long time. They had built machines that listened for signals from other worlds. For many years, those machines had heard nothing but silence. Then, 40 years ago, something changed. A research station in a place called New Mexico had picked up a strange signal. It was not random noise. It was a pattern, a language, a communication between 2 points in space that were very far away. The scientists who found it did not tell the public. They told their government instead. Over the next 4 decades, more signals were captured. The humans learned to decode them. They learned about the Vorath Dominion and the worlds it had conquered. They learned about the Galactic Compact and the rules that governed civilizations among the stars. They learned that the universe was not empty. And they learned that it was not friendly. Most importantly, they learned why the Vorath only attacked primitive worlds. Colonel Nathan Brooks sat in an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. He was 52 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for this day, the day the aliens would finally come. The room around him was filled with screens and computers. Men and women in uniform moved between stations, monitoring communications from across the globe. They had watched the Vorath fleet arrive 3 days ago. They had tracked every ship, counted every weapon, and calculated exactly how long humanity would survive in a direct fight. The answer was less than 6 hours. "Sir, the transmission is coming through," a young officer named Lisa Carter said. "They are broadcasting on all frequencies." "I'll see. Well, he won." End quote. Nathan nodded slowly. "Let it play." The message filled the room. It was in English. Perfectly translated. The Vorath had been studying humanity for a long time. They knew all of Earth's languages. They knew its history. They thought they knew everything important about the small blue world. They were wrong. The ultimatum was simple and cruel. Humanity had 30 days to surrender. All governments would dissolve. All military forces would disband. The population would be sorted and processed for labor assignments. Those who resisted would be killed. Those who cooperated would serve the Dominion for the rest of their lives. When the message ended, the room was silent. Some of the officers looked scared. Others looked angry. A few looked like they wanted to cry. Nathan Brooks felt none of those things. He felt only a cold, hard determination that had been building inside him for 20 years. "Get me a secure line to the president," he said calmly, "and start preparing the response package." Lisa looked at him with confusion. "Sir, what response? We cannot fight them. Their ships are too powerful. Our weapons cannot even reach orbit." Nathan turned to face her. There was something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not fear. It was not hope. It was the look of a man who held a secret that would change everything. "We are not going to fight them, Lieutenant. We are going to do something much worse." He walked to the main display and looked up at the image of the Vorath fleet surrounding Earth. 200 ships. Thousands of weapons. Enough firepower to end human civilization in an afternoon. "We are going to show the entire galaxy who these creatures really are. And then we are going to make them afraid of us." The young officer did not understand. None of them did yet. But they would learn soon enough. Humanity had been watching the stars for 40 years. They had been listening to every secret the Vorath thought they had hidden. They knew things that would shake the foundations of an empire. And now, it was time to speak. Dr. Laura Mitchell had worked at the SETI research facility for 23 years. SETI stood for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Her job was to listen to the sky and hope that someday, something would answer back. Her colleagues at other universities had laughed at her for decades. They said she was wasting her time. They said she was chasing ghosts. They said that humanity was alone in the universe and that she should find real work. On the morning of November 15th, Laura was drinking her third cup of coffee when every screen in the facility turned red. Alarms began to sound. Her coffee cup fell to the floor and shattered, but she did not notice. The signal was not coming from one direction. It was coming from everywhere. It was on every frequency that existed. It was so powerful that it overwhelmed radio stations, television broadcasts, and military communications across the entire planet. Within minutes, Laura understood that her life's work had just been validated in the worst possible way. 2,000 miles away, General Daniel Carter stood in the Pentagon's underground command center. He was a large man, with a shaved head and a face that looked like it was carved from stone. He had commanded soldiers in 3 wars and had seen terrible things. But nothing had prepared him for what he was seeing now. The translation appeared on the main screen as the alien message played. The Vorath Dominion claimed ownership of this sector of space. Earth was located within their territory. All nations of Earth were ordered to surrender within 30 standard days. Failure to comply would result in systematic extinction. The room was filled with generals, admirals, and senior government officials. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply stared at the screen as the message repeated itself, over and over, in every language known to humanity. "This has to be a hoax," someone said finally. "Some kind of elaborate prank." Quote, General Carter shook his head slowly. "It is not a hoax. We have confirmed the signal source. There are 200 unidentified objects in orbit around Earth. They appeared 3 days ago. We have been tracking them ever since. Why were we not told? Another officer demanded. Because we did not know what they were. Now we do. The President of the United States was connected via secure video link. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. General Carter, what are our options? Carter looked at the data on his tablet. The alien ships were massive, each one larger than an aircraft carrier. They had weapons that could strike any point on Earth's surface within seconds. Humanity's most advanced missiles would take hours to reach orbit, and the aliens would see them coming long before they arrived. Our military options are limited, Madam President. We cannot fight them in space. We have no way to shoot them down. If they decide to attack, we can only respond with nuclear weapons, and I do not believe those would be effective against their defenses. So we are helpless. In a conventional sense, yes. The President paused. What do you mean, conventional sense? Before Carter could answer, another voice came through the speakers. It was Colonel Nathan Brooks, calling from the classified facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Madam President, I believe I can help explain. For the next hour, Nathan revealed secrets that only a handful of people in the world had known. He explained that humanity had been intercepting alien communications for 40 years. He explained that government scientists had decoded their languages, studied their technology, and learned about the political structure of the galaxy. He explained that the Vorath Dominion was not as powerful as it appeared. They only attack primitive worlds. Nathan said. Species that have not yet developed faster than light travel. Species that are not protected by the Galactic Compact. What is the Galactic Compact? The President asked. A treaty between advanced civilizations. It protects recognized species from unprovoked aggression. The Vorath follow this treaty, at least officially. But they have found a way around it. They classify target worlds as uninhabited before they invade. They erase all evidence of the native populations. On paper, they are colonizing empty planets. In reality, they are committing genocide. The room fell silent again. This was almost too much to process. Aliens existed. They were here, and they were planning to wipe out humanity the same way they had wiped out countless other species. How does this help us? General Carter asked. Even if we know their methods, we still cannot fight them. Nathan smiled grimly. We do not need to fight them, General. We just need to expose them. He pulled up a new display showing decades of intercepted communications, secret orders from the Dominion Council, private messages between admirals, financial records showing the true fate of conquered populations, evidence of 17 separate genocides, each one covered up and hidden from the rest of the galaxy. The Vorath are not powerful because of their ships, Nathan explained. They are powerful because the galaxy fears them. They have built an image of invincibility. Every species they have conquered has simply surrendered because they believed resistance was hopeless. And if that image is destroyed? The President asked. Then their empire falls apart. The species they have oppressed will rise up. The civilizations they have threatened will push back. The Vorath rule through fear, and fear only works as long as no one challenges it. Lisa Carter, the young officer who had been with Nathan earlier, spoke up. Sir, how do we get this information out? The Vorath control the communication networks. They will block any transmission we send. Nathan shook his head. They control the networks inside their territory. But we have something they do not expect. For the past 30 years, we have been building our own network. He explained Project Echo, a secret program that had launched thousands of small satellites disguised as space debris. These satellites formed a web around Earth's solar system. They could receive signals from deep space, amplify them, and redirect them to any point in the galaxy. The Vorath had never noticed because they were not looking. They thought humanity was primitive. They thought humans could barely reach their own moon. They never imagined that the species they planned to enslave had been building an interstellar communication network right under their noses. We cannot fight their ships, Nathan concluded. But we can fight their reputation. We can tell the entire galaxy what they really are. And once that information is out there, they can never take it back. The president was quiet for a long moment. She understood what Nathan was proposing. It was not a military strike. It was something far more dangerous. It was an attack on everything the Vorath believed about themselves. If we do this, she said slowly, they might destroy us out of anger. They might burn our cities just to make an example. They might. Nathan agreed. But if we surrender, we die anyway. At least this way. We die fighting, and we take their empire down with us. General Carter stepped forward. I say we do it. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. One by one, the other officers nodded. The president took a deep breath and made her decision. Prepare the transmission, Colonel Brooks. It is time to show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Nathan nodded and turned to his team. They had 30 days to change the course of history. They had 30 days to teach the universe that Earth was not prey. It was time to get to work. Admiral Kethra had been waiting for humanity's response. He expected panic. He expected pleas for mercy. He expected the usual pathetic attempts at negotiation that every primitive species made before they realized how hopeless their situation truly was. What he received instead made him drop his communication tablet. The message came on the 22nd day. It did not come from a single nation or a single leader. It came from everywhere at once, broadcast on frequencies that the Vorath had believed only they could access. But more importantly, it was not directed at the fleet orbiting Earth. It was directed at the entire galaxy. Vortal rushed to the bridge with fear in his eyes. Admiral, the transmission is propagating through every relay station in the sector. We cannot stop it. The humans have somehow accessed our communication network. Kethra stared at the tactical display. The message was spreading like a disease, jumping from system to system, reaching civilizations that had never heard of Earth or its primitive inhabitants. Within hours, it would reach the Dominion homeworld. Within days, it would reach every corner of known space. What does it say? The Admiral demanded. Vortal played the recording. The message began with a simple statement. The people of Earth had been watching the stars for many years. They had listened to the conversations of other species. They had decoded the languages of the galaxy. And they had learned secrets that the Vorath Dominion thought were buried forever. Then the evidence began. The humans presented records of 17 conquered worlds. Not the official records that the Vorath had submitted to the Galactic Compact. The real records. The secret communications between admirals and council members. The orders to classify inhabited planets as empty. The instructions to eliminate all evidence of native populations before inspection teams could arrive. Planet after planet. Species after species. Billions of lives erased from history, and billions more enslaved in camps that officially did not exist. The galaxy had believed that the Vorath were harsh but lawful conquerors. The message proved that they were criminals, hiding behind a mask of legitimacy. But the humans did not stop there. The second part of the message was a technical document. It contained detailed analysis of Vorath technology, shield frequencies, weapon capabilities, engine specifications. The humans had spent decades studying intercepted data, and they understood Dominion systems better than most Vorath engineers did. They also explained how they had built their communication network. They provided the specifications for their relay satellites. They offered to share this technology with any civilization that wanted to build their own network outside of Vorath control. The third part of the message was strategic intelligence. Locations of every major Vorath military base, patrol schedules for their fleet, supply line routes, communication codes that were supposed to be unbreakable. The humans laid out the entire military structure of the Dominion for anyone who wanted to use it. And then came the final part. Admiral Kethra felt his blood turn cold as he read it. The message was addressed directly to him. It contained his personal information, his family history, the names of his mate and his offspring. The exact location of his private estate on the Dominion homeworld, the security codes for his residence, the schedule of his domestic staff. The humans made no threats. They did not need to. The implication was clear. They knew everything. They had been watching for 40 years. And they had used that time to map every secret the Dominion had tried to hide. The final words of the message were simple and direct. We are not prey. We remember everything. And we are patient beyond measure. You may destroy our world today, but we have already ensured that your crimes will never be forgotten. Every species you have wronged now knows exactly where to find you. Every enemy you have made now has the tools to fight back. The information cannot be recalled. The damage cannot be undone. You have built your empire on fear and lies. Today, both of those foundations crumble. Choose your next action carefully. Whatever you do to us, the galaxy will do to you 1,000 times over. The bridge was silent. Vortal stood frozen at his station. The other officers stared at their screens without moving. Admiral, someone said quietly, the Dominion Council is calling. They are demanding an explanation. Kethra did not respond. He was still staring at the message, reading those final words over and over again. We are not prey. In 40 years of conquest, no species had ever said those words to the Vorath. They had always begged. They had always surrendered. They had always accepted their fate because they believed they had no other choice. The humans had shown them another choice. On Earth, the reaction was immediate. The message had been broadcast publicly, translated into every human language. For the first time, the people of Earth understood what their governments had been hiding. They understood the threat they faced. And they understood what their leaders had done in response. Colonel Nathan Brooks stood in the United Nations General Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation on the planet. The room was packed with diplomats, journalists, and military officials from around the world. For 40 years, we kept this secret because we were afraid, Nathan said. We were afraid of panic. We were afraid of what would happen if people knew that aliens existed and that they were not friendly. We were afraid that humanity would tear itself apart before the threat ever arrived. He paused and looked around the room. We were wrong to keep this secret. But we were not wrong to prepare. Everything we learned during those 40 years went into the message we just sent. We have given the galaxy the truth. We have given them the tools to resist. And we have shown them that humanity will not go quietly into the night. A journalist raised her hand. What happens now? Will the aliens destroy us for what we have done? Nathan considered the question carefully. They might. We knew that risk when we sent the message. But consider the alternative. If we had surrendered, we would have been enslaved and erased from history, just like the species before us. At least this way, our existence means something. At least this way, we have made a difference. General Daniel Carter stepped forward to address the strategic situation. The Vorath fleet is still in orbit. They have not fired. They have not communicated. We believe they are waiting for instructions from their government. The message we sent has caused significant disruption to their command structure. What do we do in the meantime? Someone asked. We wait, Nathan replied. And we watch. This is not over yet. The next few days will determine the future of our species. But whatever happens, we face it together. Not as Americans or Russians or Chinese. As humans. As one people, united against a common threat. The assembly erupted in applause. For the first time in history, the nations of Earth were truly united. They had faced extinction and chosen to fight back with the only weapon they had. The truth. Now all they could do was wait and see if it was enough. The message reached the Korathi collective on the third day. The Korathi were an ancient species, older than the Vorath by several thousand years. They had once ruled a great empire of their own before withdrawing to a small cluster of worlds on the edge of the galaxy. Their homeworld had been listed in official records as destroyed by a natural disaster 200 cycles ago. Elder Tethnar sat in the council chamber, watching the human transmission play for the 7th time. Around her, the other elders murmured in voices that had not shown emotion for centuries. "It is true," she said finally. "Everything the humans claim is true. We were not destroyed by a natural disaster. We were attacked by the Vorath and forced to sign a secret treaty. They told the galaxy we were dead. They took our outer colonies. They erased our history. And now?" another elder asked. Teth Nar stood slowly, her ancient joints protesting the movement. "Now we tell the truth. Contact the Galactic Compact. Demand an investigation. The humans have given us the chance we have waited 2 centuries for." Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. The Melic Assembly, a coalition of trading species that had long suspected Vorath corruption, began mobilizing their diplomatic corps. They had never had proof before. Now, they had enough evidence to bring formal charges against the Dominion. The Ven Consortium, a group of refugee species who had fled Vorath expansion, saw the message as a call to arms. They began reaching out to other displaced civilizations, forming alliances that would have been impossible just days before. Even within Vorath space, the reaction was immediate. Client species who had been forced into servitude began to question their rulers. Military officers who had participated in the hidden genocides suddenly found themselves exposed. The Dominion Council fractured into competing factions, each one trying to blame the others for the crimes that had been revealed. Admiral Kethra received 17 different orders in 3 days, each one contradicting the last. The first order told him to destroy Earth immediately and silence the humans before they could cause more damage. The second order told him to wait for diplomatic resolution. The third order told him to return to the homeworld to face questioning. The fourth order came from a different faction and told him to ignore the previous orders. He sat alone in his quarters, staring at the wall and wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The humans had done nothing. They had built no weapons. They had launched no attacks. They had simply told the truth. And that truth had done more damage to the Dominion than 1,000 warships could have achieved. On Earth, the waiting continued. Dr. Laura Mitchell had not slept in 4 days. She sat at her station in the SETI facility, monitoring the flood of communications that now poured through human receivers from across the galaxy. Species she had never heard of were talking about Earth. News networks from other civilizations were debating humanity's future. For the first time in history, humans were part of a larger conversation. "This is incredible," she whispered to herself. "We spent decades listening to them. Now they are listening to us." In Washington, General Daniel Carter coordinated with military leaders around the world. They had no way to fight the Vorath fleet, but they could prepare for the aftermath. Emergency shelters were being stocked. Essential personnel were being moved to protected locations. If the aliens decided to attack, humanity would survive somehow. They would find a way. Colonel Nathan Brooks spent his time analyzing the galactic response to humanity's message. The results were better than he had hoped. 47 civilizations have formally acknowledged our transmission, he reported to the president. 12 have expressed support for humanity. 6 have demanded a galactic compact investigation into Vorath activities. The Dominion is facing more political pressure than they have experienced in 3 centuries. "And the fleet above us?" the president asked, still holding position. "They have not powered weapons. They have not communicated. I believe they are paralyzed by indecision." Captain Kevin Grant, a naval intelligence officer, offered his analysis. "The Vorath built their empire on the perception of strength. They conquered through fear. Every species they faced believed that resistance was impossible, so no one resisted. The humans have shown that resistance is possible. We have shown that the Vorath can be challenged, and that changes everything." The president nodded slowly. "No, ma'am. But we have not lost either. Every hour that passes without an attack is another hour for the galaxy to process what we revealed. The longer the Vorath wait, the harder it becomes for them to act. If they destroy Earth now, It will confirm everything we said about them. If they do not destroy Earth, it will prove that they can be intimidated. They are trapped, General Carter said. We trapped them with nothing but information. Dr. Michelle Grant, a historian who had been brought in to advise the government, provided context. This is not without precedent in human history. Empires have fallen before because their subjects stopped believing in their power. The British Empire collapsed when colonized peoples realized they could resist. The Soviet Union dissolved when its citizens stopped fearing the government. Power is not just about weapons. It is about belief. End quote. And we have attacked their beliefs, Nathan added. We have shown the galaxy that the Vorath are not invincible. We have shown that they can be exposed, embarrassed, and challenged by a species they considered primitive. That damage cannot be repaired with weapons. The president stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was dark. But she knew that somewhere up there, 200 alien warships were deciding whether to destroy her world. What do we do now? She asked. We wait, Nathan replied. And we hope that we have done enough. The rest is out of our hands. On the endless hunger, Admiral Kethra received one final message from the Dominion Council. It was not an order. It was a question. Can you still complete the mission? He looked at the tactical display. Earth hung below him, fragile and defenseless. His weapons could destroy every city on the surface within hours. He could end the human species and silence them forever. But it would not matter. The message was already out. The evidence was already spreading. Destroying Earth would only prove that everything the humans had said was true. It would unite the galaxy against the Dominion. It would accelerate the collapse that was already beginning. For the first time in his career, Admiral Kethra had no answer. The humans had not defeated him with weapons. They had defeated him with words. And he did not know how to fight back. He sat in silence, watching the blue planet spin slowly below him, and wondered if this was how empires ended, not with a battle, but with a single message that no one could ignore. The fleet withdrew on the 27th day. There was no announcement. There was no communication. The 200 ships that had surrounded Earth simply turned and accelerated away into the darkness of space. One moment they were there, a constant reminder of death hanging above every human head. The next moment they were gone, vanishing into the void like a nightmare, fading with the morning light. Dr. Laura Mitchell was the first to confirm it. She sat at her station, tears streaming down her face, as she watched the alien signatures disappear from her instruments, one by one. They are leaving, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. They are actually leaving. The news spread across the planet within minutes. In New York, people poured into the streets, hugging strangers and weeping with relief. In Tokyo, church bells rang even though it was 3 a.m. In Moscow, soldiers who had been preparing for the end of the world dropped their weapons and embraced each other. Humanity had survived. Colonel Nathan Brooks stood in the underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching the celebration on a dozen screens. He did not smile. He knew that the real work was just beginning. General Daniel Carter walked up beside him. We did it, Nathan. We actually did it. We survived the first day, Nathan replied. The galaxy is still out there. The Vorath are still dangerous. And we have just painted a very large target on our backs. What do you mean? Nathan turned to face him. We exposed an empire. We humiliated a species that has spent 3 centuries building a reputation for invincibility. The Vorath will not forget what we did. They will want revenge. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, they will come for us again. Then we need to be ready. Yes. We do. Ever. The following months brought changes that would have seemed impossible just a year before. The nations of Earth, united by the common threat, began working together in ways they never had. Military forces were combined into a single planetary defense command. Resources were pooled for scientific research. The petty conflicts that had divided humanity for centuries suddenly seemed unimportant compared to the challenges ahead. Dr. Michelle Grant documented the transformation in her journal. We spent thousands of years fighting each other over land, religion, and power. It took an alien invasion to remind us that we are all the same species. We are all human. And out there in the darkness, that is the only thing that matters. The Galactic Compact sent envoys to Earth within 6 months. They were strange creatures, different from the Vorath, with bodies that seemed made of light and voices that sang rather than spoke. They called themselves the Wanderers, and they had been observing humanity for a very long time. Their leader, a being named Sereth, addressed the United Nations General Assembly. "You have done something remarkable," Sereth said. "In all of galactic history, no pre-emergent species has ever successfully resisted a Vorath ultimatum. You did not resist with weapons. You resisted with truth. This is a rare and precious thing. What happens now?" the president asked. "Now you are recognized. The Galactic Compact extends protection to your species. No member civilization may attack you without facing consequences from the rest of us. You are no longer alone." The assembly erupted in applause. But Nathan Brooks remained quiet. He had read the fine print of galactic politics. Protection came with responsibilities. Recognition meant joining a community with its own rules and expectations. Humanity was about to enter a game that had been playing for millions of years. The Vorath Dominion collapsed within a decade, just as Nathan had predicted. The exposure of their crimes triggered rebellions across their territory. Client species declared independence. Military officers defected. The council members who had ordered the genocides were arrested and tried before a galactic tribunal. Admiral Kethra was among those captured. He spent his final years in a prison on a distant world, still wondering how a primitive species had destroyed everything he had built with nothing more than words. 7 years after the withdrawal, humanity launched its first interstellar vessel. They called it the Defiance, a name chosen by global referendum. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons of mass destruction. Instead, it carried diplomats, scientists, and explorers. Human beings who would represent their species to civilizations across the galaxy. Captain Stephanie Cole commanded the mission. She was 42 years old, a former naval aviator who had been training for this moment since the day the Vorath fleet disappeared from Earth's sky. She stood on the bridge as the ship prepared to leave orbit. Through the view screen, she could see Earth hanging in the darkness, blue and beautiful and home. "All stations report ready," her first officer announced. "We are clear to engage the drive." Stephanie nodded. "Take us out." The ship hummed with power as its engines came to life. The stars ahead shifted and blurred as humanity took its first step into the wider universe. In Geneva, a monument had been dedicated on the anniversary of the transmission. It stood in a plaza outside the United Nations building, a pillar of black stone with words carved deep into its surface. "We are not prey. We are humanity. We remember everything, and we are patient beyond measure. Today, we watch. Tomorrow, we build. One day, we will stand among you, not as victims, but as equals. Choose wisely how you treat us now, for we will treat you the same way forever." Colonel Nathan Brooks, now Admiral Brooks, stood before the monument with his daughter. She was 12 years old, born in the year of the withdrawal, part of the first generation that would grow up knowing that humanity was not alone. "What does it mean?" she asked, reading the words. Nathan thought about the question. He thought about the 40 years of watching and waiting. He thought about the message that had saved their world. He thought about all the challenges still ahead, the enemies who would try to destroy them, the allies who would try to use them, the endless complexity of galactic civilization. "It means we are not what they expected," he said finally. "They thought we were primitive. They thought we were helpless. They thought we would surrender. and disappear like all the others. But we did not. No. We did not. No. He looked up at the sky, at the stars that had once seemed so distant and were now within reach. We are humanity. We do not give up. We do not forget. And when someone threatens us, we find a way to fight back. Even when fighting seems impossible. His daughter smiled. So what do we do now? Nathan put his arm around her shoulders. Now we go out there and show them who we really are. Not as conquerors, not as victims, as humans, as explorers, as a species that refused to die when the universe told us we should. Far above them, the Defiance broke free of Earth's gravity and set course for the stars. The galaxy had trembled at a message. Now they would learn what humanity could do when they decided to stop watching and start moving. The universe would never be the same. And somewhere, in a prison cell on a distant world, Admiral Kethra heard the news of humanity's first interstellar voyage. He closed his eyes and finally understood the truth that he had been too arrogant to see all those years ago. Earth had never been prey. It had been a sleeping giant. And now that giant was awake. He wondered what the galaxy would look like in another century, when the species he had dismissed as primitive had spread across the stars. He suspected he would not like the answer, but he also suspected that no one would be able to stop them. And,